Okay, so today we are going to be looking at that dance situation again, and we have two different table arrangements that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so both of these are hexagonal shaped tables, but the first situation that we're looking at has the tables separated, and the second one has them pushed together. Okay, so that's going to give us a little bit different of a set of data than for each situation. Okay, so we're going to start by filling in a table of values from our picture. Okay, so we're looking at the number of tables and the number of people, and that's going to be the same for both situations. So I'm going to go ahead and label both tables with those headings. Okay, and then knowing that we always like to find our y-intercept in our table, we like that to be in there. I'm going to start my table at 0. Even though I don't have a picture that shows 0 tables, I still want to do that. Start with 0 so I have my y-intercept in my table. And then I'm just going to look at the diagram above, and I'm going to look at one table in the pushed apart or table separated version. And it looks like I have 6 people at one table. If I have 2 tables, I have 12. 3, I have 18. 4, I have 24. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the tables pushed together. I'm going to start with 0, and I'm going to label down to 4 because I show 4 tables pushed together in my picture. And I'm going to look at my first table, and my first table is just all by itself, which sits 6 people. And then I'm going to look at the 2 put together. So if I look at the 2 put together, I have 4 people up top, 4 people at the bottom, and 1 on each end. Okay, so that gives me 10 people all together. If I look at the 3 tables pushed together, I have 2, 4, 6 at the top, 6 at the bottom, and 1 on each side. So that gives me 14 altogether. And then if I look at 4 tables pushed together, that gives me 2, 4, 6, 8 on the top, 8 on the bottom, and 1 on each side, so 18. Okay, so this is the data in the table that I've pulled from my picture. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up because we're going to be asked to do some things with this data. Okay, so I'm looking at this and we are being told to write the rule. Okay, so anytime that I want to write the rule, I'm going to start with my skeleton. Okay, and I need to find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so to find the slope, I'm always looking at my change in y divided by my change in x. Okay, so I'm looking at what's happening with my y values, and my y values are increasing by 6. And then I look at my x values, and my x values, they're increasing by 1. Okay, so that means that my slope is going to be 6 divided by 1, which is 6. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in my skeleton as my slope. Okay, to find my y-intercept, I need the y value when x is 0. So I have to work backwards in the pattern. Okay, so if in the forward motion I'm adding 6, if I'm going backwards in the pattern, I have to subtract 6 to get my y-intercept. If I take 6 away from 0, I get 0. So my y-intercept then is 0. Okay. I'm going to go through the same process with the second table. I'm going to start by writing my skeleton. And I'm going to find my slope first by looking at my change in y divided by my change in x. Okay, so I have 6, 10, 14, 18. I'm looking at how those values are changing. And they're changing by increasing 4 each time. I'm going to look at my change in x. And my x's are increasing by 1. So my change in y divided by my change in x is 4 divided by 1, which gives us 4 as my slope. Okay. Again, I've got to go backwards in the table to find my y-intercept. So I'm looking for that y value that comes before 6. So going backwards in this pattern, I'm actually going to subtract 4, which gives me a y-intercept of 2. Okay. And then we're being asked to look at the slope, look at the y-intercept, and explain what they mean in the situation. Okay, so whenever we're thinking about what does the slope mean, okay, usually, almost always, we can take the slope, which in this case is 6, and we can say to ourselves, okay, 6 blank per blank. So if we look at our situation, 6 blank per blank, that's the meaning of the slope. What are we talking about? We're talking about people and tables. So in our first situation, there are 6 people per table. Okay, and if you look at it, it makes sense. 6 people, 6 and 6, 6, 6 and 6. That repetition of adding 6 people every time you add a table, that indicates the meaning of your slope. Okay, with our first rule, we don't have a y-intercept, so we really don't need to say anything about it. The y-intercept is 0, so we don't need to say anything. Okay, the nice thing about these both being the same situation is that the slope would mean the same thing if we look at the second rule. Okay, so we have 4 people per table. And that's coming strictly from looking at the table right here. So every time we add a table, we add 4 people, we add 4 people, we add 4 people. So 4 people per table, the slope still means the same thing. It's just a different number in this equation. We need to figure out what this plus 2 means for the y-intercept, okay? So I'm gonna go up and look at my picture, okay? And I'm gonna say to myself, okay, I have 4 people at this table. I have 4 people at this table, plus 1 on each end. I have 4 people at this table, 4 people at this table, 4 people at this table, plus 1 on each end. I have 4, 4, 4, 4, plus 1 on each end. Okay, and that 1 on each end, that's our plus 2. That's the meaning of our y-intercept. So we have 4 people per table, plus 2 people, 1 on each end. Okay. All right. The only other thing I want to talk about is just some slope words and some y-intercept words. So I'm going to move back up to the top of this document. And we're going to talk about some slope words. And these are words that if you see them in a word problem, you should automatically think, oh, well, that word is there. This means this number is the slope. Okay, and those words are per, each, every, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Anytime you see any words like this, that number that they're attached to is your slope. Okay, and that's going to be important on tonight's homework. Okay, then we also have our y-intercept words. Okay, y-intercept words. Starting value. Initial fee. Flat fee. One-time charge. Okay, anything that is your starting value, your initial value, or a one-time charge, those indicate y-intercepts. Okay, all right, that's it.